Sairam, dear students. In the last class, we discussed about the growth of industries, how various industries grew since independence in India, in Indian economy. So let us just briefly revise what we covered in the last class. So we talked about industrial policy resolution. Do you remember? I told that certain decisions were taken by the parliament in the year 1956 about what these decisions were taken in order to facilitate growth of industrial sector in India. So after we got independence, so the then politicians took the decision, unless and until we grow in industries, we will not be able to achieve the economic growth. We were a underdeveloped nation and we wanted to become a developed country dependent on our own self, that is self-reliant. So if we want to become a developed country, we want to establish more and more industries which can manufacture goods. Those times people needed clothing, textiles, basic equipment for manufacturing various household items that are required, etc. So therefore, public sector actually, that is government owned and controlled enterprises. What do you mean by public sector? Whenever we say public banks, for example, say State Bank of India is a public bank, Bank of Baroda is a public bank, it's a public sector, which means it is owned and managed and controlled by government. Public sector will lead the growth of industrial sector, which means there is very less place for private companies. We see many private companies today. I'll come to it, how many private companies started establishing their own industries. But in the year 1956, the decision was taken that public sector will be leading the growth of industrial sector with establishing heavy industries. So government will start some industries, government will invest capital, and these are some of the industries that government started in the second and third 5-year plan. We discussed this in the last class. So there is BHEL, BEL, ONGC, all these companies are existing even today, and these were all started during second and third 5-year plans. And the aim was to what? Why basic industries or heavy industries? Another name for heavy industries is basic industries, because they provide basic tools, equipments, machineries required to produce valuable commodities. Say I told you about clothing, isn't it? We are all wearing different kinds of clothing, shirts, pants, etc. And to manufacture these, we need equipment, isn't it? Who will manufacture these equipments? So those are by basic industries. Now for these tools and machines, we need petrol or diesel to run the engines, or even electricity for that matter. Who will manufacture these equipments to generate electricity or to explore for crude oil, petroleum, etc. These tools will be manufactured by heavy industries. So heavy industries are the foundation, isn't it? So for an economic growth, heavy industries are the foundation of any economy. So it was decided that first we will start heavy industries. And why? What was the purpose? So that it will reduce the burden on the industry. What kind of burden? See, there is employment burden, there is income, etc. You have to provide for livelihood. All this was the responsibility of agriculture sector. Means people had only farming, majority of them engaged in farming, and there were few industries. It was not enough to provide for whole economy. So there was a need for alternative employment and alternative income resources. So the second reason was to enable growth in the production of consumer goods industries. I told you what consumer goods and what capital goods are. You remember? So they wanted to enable growth in consumer goods industries. And the third one is to enable growth in small industries that are helpful for employment generation. We discussed about small industries such as agarbatti industries. So there are certain equipments that they need. It will be manufactured by heavy industries to achieve self-reliance. See, we were depending on imports, that is buying goods from other countries for satisfying our own needs or wants in our economy. So we had to depend on our own selves. That is called self-reliance. So these are some of the reasons why basic industries were established. So we also talked about how industries grew over the years. So after we adopted the resolution to start the industrial growth with establishing heavy industries, industrial growth actually picked up faster. Therefore, it led economic growth. But it lasted only till 1960s. What happened? Investment in industries reduced. There are many reasons, but at this stage of learning, you just need to know that in the 60s, there was a lot of expenditure by government on wars, severe droughts during 1960s. And government had to spend money on war with China, war with Pakistan, and severe drought in agriculture. So there was not enough money left with the government to invest in industries. So in the 1960s, investment reduced, and in the 80s, again, power sector such as coal, hydroelectricity, etc. expanded. Even transportation such as railway industry. So it became stronger. So in the 60s, 60 till 70s and end of 70s, investment was very less in the industries. In the 80s again, it became stronger. But what happened in the 90s? That is, in the beginning of 1990, 1991, industries suffered from huge losses because of mismanagement of resources. Mismanagement means not using the economic resources efficiently to produce quality goods. What happened? Lot of people involving in public sector didn't have the encouragement to produce quality goods because there was no competition. See, in telecom there was BSNL or MTNL. You all know Jio and Airtel, etc. These companies. These are the major shareholders in the market. But during that time there was only one company. Imagine there is only one company. And we are not importing foreign goods and foreign equipment. So the government decided to manufacture and produce for everybody. So there was no competition. Whenever there is no competition, you will observe that there will be no quality also. Imagine if a teacher tells you that we will conduct a test or an exam and none of you will be given any marks. So therefore, there will be no comparison of your marks, etc. Very few of us have the zeal to get first rank or second rank or distinction, isn't it? So therefore, in a way, competition results in quality. In sports, for example, if there is no competitive spirit, will you have records? Will you have great feats of sportsmen? So competition is very important. So there was actually mismanagement and lethargy in public sector. So that resulted in losses. So this is what you need to know at this stage. At higher stages in your class, you will learn more about how public sector resulted in heavy losses and etc. So in the 1991, it was decided that let us allow private sector participation. That is, let us give permission to private parties. Even a private individual also can start industries. But till 1991, there used to be private industries. Tatas and many other companies were started long back. They existed, but actually their participation was very, very limited. Very, very few industries existed. Now, more and more private industries were encouraged in the year 1991. How? How did this happen? That is what we are going to discuss in today's class. So in the year 1991, public sector, that is government owned companies were resulting in losses. They were not selling the products because the products produced by these companies were not of a high quality, not of a good quality. So therefore, many Indians started importing products and goods from foreign countries. So economic growth reduced, heavy losses which incurred by the public sector. So therefore, government had to rethink. So in the year 1991, they came up with a model called liberalization, privatization and globalization. Now this model actually was followed by many countries such as China, fast developing countries. Therefore, India also decided that let us adopt this model. Now what is the meaning of each of these terms? We will discuss. So liberalization, this is not given in your textbook. It is just mentioned as one sentence, but briefly you should know what it means, isn't it? Otherwise you wouldn't really understand whenever we talk about liberalization in the next chapter. So liberalization means process whereby state lifts restrictions on some private individual activities. Say very casually, we discuss liberal means freedom, isn't it? The literal meaning of the word liberal is freedom. Here they talk about process where state lifts restrictions. What do you mean by state? State means government. Okay, state means not just Karnataka state, Andhra Pradesh, etc. So government decides that let us give freedom to private individuals on some of the activities. So government restricted many activities. Government decides to give freedom for private individual. For what activities? In this subject, we are only interested in economic activity, isn't it? So economic activities such as production, consumption and distribution, etc. These activities were given to private sector and they were allowed to engage in economic activities. So in short, economic liberalization is reduction of state involvement. Reduction of state involvement means reducing the government control in the economy and allow for private sector. So that is liberalization, specifically economic liberalization. So why? We discussed that there were many licenses, hundreds of licenses that a company had to take before 1990 to start an industry. So imagine every time you need to do a new activity, you have to go to government offices, stand in the queue and pay the bribe, okay, at every state so that they give you license. Because whenever permissions are granted by government, there will be some kind of a bribing or recommendations involved, isn't it? So it will actually discourage a person who want to start an industry. It was very rigid. Rigid means controlled. There was no freedom. Also, the idea was to allow international companies to come into the country. So when you allow private companies, even foreign countries can come and start companies in India and allow domestic companies to explore foreign territories, to take the capital outside the country. So outside the Indian economy to foreign countries so that they can start companies outside and sell sell the finished products there, etc. So these are some of the reasons why liberalization was encouraged. And next term is privatization. What is privatization? The word itself says private, isn't it? Private sector. So the process of transferring ownership or control of government owned public sector companies. I told you BSNL is one example of government owned companies. Air India today is government owned companies. Imagine if a government decides to sell the shares and the control of these companies to private sector. For example, BSNL is sold to a private sector such as Jio or Airtel. BSNL has a huge infrastructure. Imagine how efficiently this infrastructure can be utilized. Many such other companies in the government were actually sold to private parties. Why? Allow for more private participation. It will encourage manufacturing, efficiency, production, quality of the production, etc. It brings in more efficiency as we discussed. Efficiency means better management of resources. If a teacher tells you utilize your time efficiently, means don't waste your resource, that is time. So efficiency means in public sector there were resources, equipments, land, huge machineries which were not utilized to the best of the ability. By using these resources, they wanted to improve loss-making companies which were not performing very well. So they encouraged private parties to take over these companies. And the next term is globalization. So you see a heart symbol where there are many flags of the countries. Okay, this is just a symbol to say that globalization means more integration of markets. Integration means connecting one market to another so that there is cooperation among each other. Say for example, now China or Taiwan or US manufactures good mobile phones and Indians want to buy them. We don't have the manufacturing facilities which can produce such a good quality phones. There are Indian companies such as Micromax, etc. but they're not coming up with quality phones, isn't it? See how many of us are using the foreign products, are getting benefited by utilizing their products. At the same time, we are selling some goods to foreign countries. For example, basmati rice. India exports around $4 billion of rice to many of the foreign countries, which are actually relishing the goods that are produced in India. So India sells basmati rice and they sell us some mobile phones or computers, etc., other equipments. So the idea is, over the period of time, by globalizing, by allowing Indian market to connect, to integrate. Integrate means to mix or to encourage the contact, etc. So contacting with global economy, what will happen? Interconnectedness will lead to the growth of cooperation. So that was the idea of globalization. You might have heard this term in your social studies. It has many social, cultural meaning of this term, but economic meaning is to connect the markets, Indian market, that is Indian economy, with US market or US economy, or Chinese market or European market, so that we all cooperate with each other and get benefited with the cooperation. So this is the term used to indicate this idea. So globalization was embraced or supported in the year 1991. So we discussed liberalization, privatization and globalization. So in the 1991, suddenly when India was allowed to explore foreign territories, foreign companies were allowed to come into India, private companies were encouraged and government control was reduced, what happened? There was a significant growth in industries. Industrial sector production increased. Infrastructure increased, that is roads, connectivity, transportation, facilities such as telecommunication, etc. increased. And there was a reduction in excise duty. Excise duty means taxes on imports. This is called excise duty. Whenever we buy foreign goods from other countries, we pay taxes. And even exporting also, some duties are imposed. They are called import and export duties. That term is together, it is given excise duty. And also finance availability. Suddenly a US banker started giving loan to Indian companies so that they can start industries, they can buy machineries and provide quality goods and services. So in the early 1991, this process started. But the end of 90s, that is 99, 98, 2000, growth rate again started slowing down. See, this is observed in any economy. There will be growth for some time, and then there will be reduction in growth. Various reasons. Again the growth will pick up. Again the reduction in growth. This is called business cycle in economics. So you'll learn more about it in later classes. But you just know that in the year nearing 2000, the growth rate slowed down because stiff competition from foreign companies. Foreign companies started bringing their products to India. Many people started buying foreign produced goods or using foreign companies' technology. So there was inadequate infrastructure support in India. So therefore, Indian companies could not withstand foreign competition. It reduced the growth of Indian industries. But again in year 2002-2008, the recovery started. Householders started saving more and more money. So when banks have more money, what they do? They give loans, isn't it? They give loans to industries, industrial or companies or any businessman. So therefore, again the growth rate started. Why? Because savings rate actually increased in the economy. So in a way, foreign competition encouraged what? Increasing the quality of the products, improvement in finances, banking sector. Also, the companies started adopting the process of foreign companies such as customer care, customer services, etc. So therefore, after 1991, we benefited from foreign competition in a way. It is only discussed in your textbook till 2008. That is, you can see here in this graph that there was a growth in industries from 2000 2002 onwards, 2005, 2006, 2007, 8, nearly 15.5% of increase in production. But after that, we couldn't pick up the pace of growth. Even now, industrial sector is suffering. Now, in your textbook, only till 2008 is being discussed. That is when India and world economy underwent severe economic crisis. Because in developed countries such as America and Europe, there was actually financial crisis. They suffered in their economy because of the failure of many of their banks. So they started importing or started buying from India. Many Indians lost jobs, etc. During this period of time, actually growth rate reduced to 2.5. Till there it is discussed in your textbook. But after that, what happened? Again the growth rate picked up in the year 2010, 2011, and again it started reducing. For various reasons, one reason being the world economy has actually undergone huge increase in oil prices. Many of the wars that are happening in Russia and Southeast, Middle East. So there are many reasons which you will study in later classes. At this point of time, you only need to know that after 2010, again the industrial sector actually reduced, and in 2013 it actually reached a decrease, that is negative growth rate. Production decreased, it did not increase at all. That is in the year 2013 and 14, and again it is picking up, but it is not enough. Only minor increase in the growth rate. So this is what you have to know, and this particular graph is not part of your textbook, but it has been depicted here just so that you know what is the recent industrial sector growth like. So in the recent times, industrial sector is not doing well, especially now during COVID time. Industries have suffered heavy losses because everybody is staying home, the production is stopped, so therefore Indian industries are suffering. So this much you should know for at this stage of your economic learning, and more of it we will discuss in the future classes. So the first chapter is over with this video, and in the next video we will be looking at the second chapter. Thank you. Sai Ram.